On that day, I thought my wife would be thrilled to hear my story. But she clearly stated, "Going together is impossible." Since we started living separately, she has become more lively. She even wears clothes I've never seen before in front of me. I couldn't help but start suspecting her actions, and eventually, I took such drastic measures. Witnessing a side of her I never knew. My name is John. I just turned 50 last month. I may not be at an age where congratulations are expected, but my wife, Susan, prepared a feast, and our children surprised me with gifts to celebrate. Blessed with such a wonderful family, I truly am lucky. I'm grateful for everything, especially since Susan has been managing our home and raising our kids so well. We met at work and dated for 2 years before we got married. She wanted to keep working for a while, and did, but after finding out she was pregnant, she reluctantly quit her job because I wanted her to stay at home. The belief that the wife should manage the home and the husband should earn for the family might be old-fashioned, but I just can't seem to change that mindset. Susan seemed to understand and never complained. So, I thought she agreed with it. But that was just my assumption. I created an atmosphere where she couldn't voice her opinions, and maybe I just convinced her to agree with me. And I was under the illusion that our family was harmonious. After that, Susan gave birth to our son, Tyler, and 3 years later, our daughter, Lily, was born. In my career, I was given important responsibilities, leading a life that could be described as smooth sailing. I had subordinates at work who relied on me. I was competent in my job and enjoyed riding my motorcycle on weekends. I took pride in being a capable man. Once both kids started elementary school, Susan expressed her desire to work again during school hours. Considering she had wanted to continue working even after marriage, it's possible that the decade she spent as a stay-at-home mom, from Tyler's pregnancy to Lily's elementary school years, felt suffocating. However, back then, I couldn't understand her feelings. "You want to work. Isn't my salary enough? We'll need more money as the kids start taking lessons and such." "That's exactly why I want to work, so I can fully support what they want to do," she said with sparkling eyes. But back then, I failed to notice that spark in her eyes and ended up saying, "Susan doesn't need to worry about money. I learn enough, and you just need to support what the kids want to do." I couldn't bend my policy of providing for my wife and children. It never occurred to me that Susan wanted to work for reasons other than money. Perhaps understanding my stance or simply being dismayed by it, Susan swallowed her words about wanting to work and never mentioned it again. That didn't mean our marriage was falling apart. We would go out as a family on weekends and take trips during long holidays. I thought we were a happy family. Susan, as a homemaker, took perfect care of the house every day, looked after the kids well, prepared delicious meals, and waited for my return. The kids were also growing up to be obedient and nice, engaging in activities like baseball and piano. I'm truly grateful for everything, as it was all possible because my wife stayed at home and took good care of our children. My son graduated from college, had a child right away, got married at 23, and became a father. Lily is enjoying her college life at 20. I continued to focus on development work in the field, and my efforts were recognized when I was offered a transfer. I was asked to become the head of a new factory in a certain town and to get involved in training newcomers. At that time, I had just turned 50. Unable to give an immediate answer, I spent the whole day contemplating by myself. With Tyler having moved out and Lily being in college, the kids have grown up enough to live without their parents. Leaving behind our comfortable life for the countryside, I began to think that spending time there with my wife might actually be nice. Without consulting my wife, I decided to accept the transfer order. That day, after work, I went home and broached the subject of the transfer to my wife. For some reason, I was convinced that she would be thrilled with the idea and would definitely follow me. However, her response was not what I had imagined. "I can't go with you." "What did you say just now?" I asked again, doubting my own ears. "I don't want to sell this house. Plus, Lily is still living with us, so I can go with you." Since she had never expressed her own will so clearly before, I felt rejected and became dejected. Feeling deflated, I was sitting there when my wife continued. "Besides, my parents are not in good health. I can't just leave them behind." Faced with that, I had no choice but to agree. "Yeah, it would be worrisome to move with them not feeling well. All right, I'll go alone then. I'll come back on weekends." "That sounds good. I'll prepare a feast for you on weekends," she said, softening her previously tense face into a smile. Having always agreed with me before, her sudden opposition made me start to feel a slight distrust towards her. The following month, I went alone to the site of the new factory, marking my first solo assignment. Initially, as the construction was still underway, I worked from a makeshift prefab office, handling training and other operational tasks. During that time, I spent my weekends returning home to my waiting wife and daughter. As the factory got busier and completion neared, my trips home became less frequent, sometimes every 2 weeks or once a month. One day, I decided to return home unexpectedly, without informing my wife. "I'm home," I announced as I opened the front door, only to find the entrance cluttered with bags and cardboard boxes from deliveries, which was unusual for my tidy wife, and shoes scattered about. Are you back today?" she asked in a flustered manner, starting to tidy up the entrance. "I just thought I'd come home since work has slowed down a bit, but what's with this mess?" I inquired, concerned about her well-being. "Sorry, I caught a cold and have been bedridden," she said with a wry smile. "Are you okay? Don't push yourself too hard." "Thank you, I haven't been shopping, so how about we eat out today?" she suggested. We decided to go out for a meal. However, when she returned after changing, I was surprised to see her in a long skirt, a departure from her usual pants, and carrying an unfamiliar bag. "Wow, you've changed your style. It's been a while since I've seen you in a skirt." "Do you think so? This is a hand-me-down from Lily. She said she didn't need it anymore, so I decided to wear it," she replied nonchalantly. I wanted to believe her, but the distrust that had arisen when she refused to move with me resurfaced, and I began to doubt her. I thought about confirming with Lily but didn't want to involve her in our marital issues, so I remained silent. Even after returning to my assignment, the thought of my wife changing worried me, affecting my work. It was unimaginable that my wife, who always cared for and worried about me, could be paying attention to another man. I didn't want to imagine, let alone believe, that she could betray me. Yet, contrary to my feelings, I found myself imagining scenarios of what if. As I became more distracted, I was reprimanded more frequently. Realizing I couldn't fulfill my role as a manager, I decided to take some leave, return home without telling my wife, and confront her directly. I took a day off on Friday and planned to use the weekend to return home. Leaving early in the morning, I arrived near our house around 9 a.m. To avoid being noticed, I parked my car in a nearby lot and was about to head to our house when the front door opened. I reflexively hid behind something. My daughter left for school. "I'll see you later," I observed my wife waving goodbye to our daughter. Now that my daughter was gone, only my wife would be at home, so I hurried to follow her, only to see her also leaving the house, presumably to go somewhere. Spying on someone felt uncomfortable, but I followed my wife discreetly from a distance. After about a 15-minute walk from our house, she entered a certain place. It was a nursing home for the elderly. I wondered if her parents had been admitted there. I could have gone in and asked her, but I just couldn't muster the courage, fearing I might uncover some unwelcome truth. Even after waiting for 15, then 30 minutes, she didn't come out. So I went to a nearby cafe where I could watch the entrance of the nursing home and waited for her to emerge. How long did I wait in that cafe? Ordering coffee after coffee and feeling the annoyed glances of the staff until I began to doze off, and finally, she came out. It was past 3 p.m. by the time she left. I hurriedly paid the bill and followed her. While following her, I felt like I was in some detective TV show, excited by the thrill of the chase, even though it felt out of place. However, she wasn't heading towards any supermarket or familiar area. Could it be that she was meeting someone? The excitement turned to a nervous anticipation. Could I confront her if I discovered a hidden side of her? I was shocked to realize how meek I had become in the situation, despite always priding myself on my confidence as a man. Could it have been a 20-minute walk from the nursing home? Just imagining what might await filled me with such anxiety it felt like my chest might burst. She then energetically entered a certain place. It was a driving school. She already had a driver's license, so what business did she have there? I discreetly moved to a spot where I could see inside and searched for her. There she was, about to put on a helmet. She then got on a motorcycle and started the engine. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, but there was no mistake. It was my wife, learning to ride a motorcycle. She looked as happy as a child excited for a much-anticipated class. I felt deeply saddened that she had kept this a secret from me. Dejected, I walked back home. Upon opening the door, I found my daughter had already returned. "Dad, what's up? Did you take the day off work?" she asked, surprised to see my dispirited demeanor. "Yes, I took a day off. Hey, did you know that your mom was working?" "Ah, you should ask Mom directly. I have a part-time job now, so I'm heading out," she said, waving goodbye before leaving. I sat on the living room sofa, reminiscing about the sight of her working and taking motorcycle lessons. She always smiled at home, but the smile I saw today while she was working and learning to ride was different. It seemed to radiate from within. The traditional belief that men should provide and women should take care of the home had been my way of life, but I began to wonder if it had been too restrictive for her. I wanted to avoid burdening her with housework, childcare, and a job. But upon reflection, I realized that if I had taken on half the household duties, she could have pursued work without it being too much of a burden. Seeing her so vibrant and alive outside the home made me realize that what I had been doing might have been more of a hindrance than a help. Lost in these thoughts, I didn't even notice the living room darken as the day turned to night. Then, I heard the sound of the front door unlocking. In the dark room where no one was supposed to be, my wife noticed my presence and let out a scream like cry. Yikes. Whoa, what's wrong? I hadn't even realized I had startled my wife and approached her, speaking up. "Is that you? What are you doing in such a dark room?" She turned on the light and looked at me. Sorry, just lost in thought. Mind sitting here for a bit?" I encouraged my wife to sit on the sofa. "But I have to prepare dinner. Does it have to be now?" My wife hurriedly stored the groceries in the fridge and reached for her apron to start dinner. "Can you sit here instead of making dinner?" At my words, she stopped reaching for her apron and finally sat down opposite me. "Susan, I'm sorry." What for? What are you apologizing for?" "I had someone follow Susan today." "You followed me?" "Yes, walked from the morning to the nursing home, left there after 3 p.m., and then walked to the driving school." She looked a bit sheepish upon hearing my story, but soon laughed and said, "You caught me in everything." She said it in a childlike manner. I'm sorry for keeping it a secret, but why? That's because, well. As I hesitated to speak clearly, she spoke up for me. You thought something was fishy because I didn't want to move with you for your job transfer, right? I felt my face turning red as she spoke my exact thoughts. I just nodded silently. Seeing this, Susan burst into laughter. She seemed much more cheerful and louder than when we lived together, which made me wonder if her personality had changed. Noticing my surprise, she explained, I'm working at a nursing home now. There are many people hard of hearing or very cheerful, so I naturally ended up speaking like this. Why did you decide to work secretly, and why are you taking motorcycle lessons? I pressed on, wanting clear answers from her. She was silent for a moment but then looked me in the eyes and began to speak. You always told me not to worry about money and allowed me to want to work. It wasn't just about money. I wanted more social connections. Staying at home every day, waiting for the kids, cooking meals, and then it all starts over again. I couldn't bear the thought of my life being just about being a housewife. I wanted to talk to people outside of our family. She shared her true feelings, looking away and then back at me. So when you mentioned the possibility of relocating for work, I thought it was my chance. I couldn't boldly go against your wishes of keeping me as a housewife while living together. That's why I said I wouldn't move with you and took up the nursing job I had been invited to by a friend. It's tiring, but it's refreshing. It makes me feel alive. And then, one thing led to another, and I thought I'd get my motorcycle license. You were interested in motorcycles. The first time I rode a motorcycle was with you. I always enjoyed the wind on my back when I rode with you. But then I thought, shouldn't I be more than just protected by you all the time? I want to be with you for a long time and enjoy your hobbies too. Every time you went on a bike ride, I wished I could share that joy with you. So that's how it was. I had it all wrong. Hearing her inner thoughts made me want to hug her tightly right there and then. A strange misunderstanding. Don't tell me you thought I was cheating. She laughed off my embarrassed demeanor, finding it funny. No, it's just that you seemed so lively since I've been gone, and seeing you in skirts, I got worried. That's absurd. I'm still the same, whether now or before. It's because you work so hard that I can pursue what I want now. I'm very grateful for that. So, once I get my bike license, there's something I want us to do together. Will you listen? Of course. With a beaming smile, she said, I want to go on a bike tour with you. I've always wanted to try touring. Bike touring. I want to ride a bike and visit various tourist spots. Hearing this, I made a decision. I returned to my transfer location and devoted myself to training my successor. Then, having nurtured talents capable of passing the baton to the next generation, I opted for early retirement from the company. By that time, I had reached the age of 55. Both my company and subordinates tried to persuade me to stay, but I had accomplished everything I could. Believing that passing the baton to new individuals is also the duty of those above, I decided to step down gracefully. After retiring, I returned home and instead of settling into a quiet life of retirement, I took over the household chores, cleaning, laundry, and cooking in place of my wife, who works in caregiving. I also ended up taking care of our eldest son's children. Since my daughter-in-law was pregnant with their third child, I offered to help by taking care of the grandchildren, hoping to be of some use. It seems he would have preferred to ask my wife, but I boasted, I've taken care of you guys too. Leave it to me with confidence, which led to me picking up the 5-year-old and 4-year-old grandkids from kindergarten almost daily and spending the afternoons playing with them. Grandpa, whose bike is this red one, and which one is yours? This one here is your grandma's. We're planning to go out on these bikes this weekend. Wow, that's cool. I want to ride a bike too. When you're a bit older, get your bike license, and then we can all go out together with Grandma and me. After dropping the grandkids off at home, preparing dinner and waiting for my wife to return from work became my daily routine. Now, I can fully understand her desire to stay connected with society. If I could, I'd tell my younger self, understand what your wife is feeling. Support her as she shines. That's why I keep telling my son, almost naggingly, consider your wife's feelings. It's your duty as a husband to support her. I might be the last person to say this, but it's something I learned from the most important person in my life. Now, what about making some pudding for the grandkids' snack tomorrow? Imagining their happy faces, I felt excited about the start of my second life. I work as a staff member at a shop within a large hospital. I had no particular complaints about my job and was generally satisfied. One night, while I was walking inside the hospital for some errands, I encountered a commotion. It seemed a hospitalized child had started suffering. I saw a new female doctor struggling with a difficult intubation. Her hands were shaking, and she couldn't perform the procedure calmly. Judging the situation, I took the tube from her. Let me try, I can do this. As she watched, astonished, I successfully completed the procedure, leading to an unexpected turn of events. My name is John. I'm a 35-year-old ordinary guy you could find anywhere in the country. I work as a staff member at a shop. Even though it's a shop, it's different from a supermarket or a convenience store. It's a shop located inside a hospital in New York. It's quite a large hospital, frequented by outpatients and those accompanying inpatients. Not only patients, but doctors and nurses from the same hospital also visit the shop. In the early mornings and just before closing time, it's not unusual for the shop to be crowded with people in white coats. $10, please. During lunchtime, a senior nurse came to buy her lunch. She picked up a sandwich, a bottle of tea, and a small pastry. She seems to have a sweet tooth, a bit of a struggle for someone in the medical profession. After giving in to her cravings, she ended up buying these. Here is your change. After ringing her up, I bagged her items and handed her the change. She took it, opened her clasp wallet, and clanked the coins in. She put the receipt in the bag with her purchases. Thank you. She whispered her thanks and walked away from the register. As I watched her back, I also responded, thank you. Although it might sound like a scripted line, almost robotic, I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. Can I have this, please? Sure, just a moment. Next at the register was a little boy. Given that he was wearing hospital clothes, he's likely an inpatient. He looked to be about 5 years old, holding a robot and a monster toy in his small hands. Standing behind him was a petite woman. She's probably the boy's mother. The total is $10 for both items. Here you go. She placed a $10 bill on the tray. We sell food and toys catering to various needs at our shop within the hospital. Hospitals aren't exactly fun places, and for children, they can be downright scary. We try to offer a selection of compassionate items to help them get through tough times a little easier. $10, exactly. Here's your receipt. I handed the receipt to her and the toys to him. Thank you so much. He thanked me with a bright smile and a lively voice. Please come again. Cheered up by his energy, I waved goodbye to them with a smile. And so, I work at the shop like this. It's primarily a standing job, which can be quite tiring, but there are energetic kids like the boy earlier who share their energy with me. Huh? But then again, this is a hospital. It's not uncommon for children to become scared and start crying. Mule. A baby being held by his mother in the line for the register started crying loudly. Oh dear, he's gotten fussy. I thought to myself as I worked through the line, eventually reaching this mother and child. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." The mother apologized to those around her, looking embarrassed. Despite her talking to and gently rocking the baby, who seemed about a year old, there was no sign he was going to stop crying anytime soon. "It's okay. It's a baby's job to cry, after all," I reassured her while scanning the items in her basket. The baby continued to cry the whole time. The surrounding glances gathered, and she looked even more apologetic. "All right, time for my secret weapon." After finishing scanning the items, I handed over the change and the receipt. Right after that, I pulled out a pinwheel from under the counter. It was a red pinwheel, made of plastic film attached to a handle. "Look, it goes round and round." I spun the pinwheel in front of the crying baby. Sniffling, he looked at it curiously. On his arm, I noticed a hospital band with the hospital's name, the room number, and the name Michael Brown. It seems he's one of the kids admitted here. Round and round, round and round. As I kept blowing on it to make it spin, he became interested in the pinwheel. His face lit up with a smile, a stark contrast to his earlier crying, and he reached out his hands towards it, giggling. "This one's on the house. Here you go." "Thank you so much, I'm so sorry." After I gave the pinwheel as a gift, she expressed her gratitude with a shrinking demeanor. It's rare these days to meet someone so humble. I sent off then with a smile, impressed. Phew, glad that didn't escalate. The line at the register ended with that family. Another staff member is taking care of restocking. It looks like I can take a breather for now. Just then, a woman rushed up to me. I thought she wanted to pay, but she didn't seem to be holding any items. That was amazing. He stopped crying so quickly. She's a doctor from this hospital. Wearing a blue scrub topped with a white coat, she had a red name tag hanging around her neck. I remember, she's the new doctor who recently joined. I'm a doctor, but kids get scared of me. They start crying, saying, "Mule, scary face." She laughed, scratching her cheek. Despite her lovely smile, there's nothing particularly frightening about her. She's probably just so focused on her work as a doctor that her face stiffens up on the spot. That must be tough. Glancing at her name tag, I saw emergency medicine written on it. I see. Working in emergency medicine means dealing with a wide range of ages, from adults to children. She might also struggle with issues like she mentioned. I'm not exactly a favorite among children either. Without little tricks like them, I'd be at a loss. Saying this, I pulled out a plastic bag from under the counter to show her. Inside, there are several pinwheels, paper-made toys, and candies. All of these are intended for situations like the one earlier. That's not true at all. But she shook her head, denying my words. You're always loved by everyone, kids and elders alike, as a cashier in the store. Her eyes sparkled as she looked straight at me. The intensity was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but feel taken aback. Really, you think so? Yes, absolutely. The nurses say they find your service comforting. I'm envious of that skill, she said with a slight laugh. Then, with a graceful motion, she picked up a ham sandwich and a can of coffee near the register and placed them on the counter. Could you please check these out for me? Feeling awkward about being praised for my customer service, which I hadn't given much thought to, I went ahead and processed her purchase as usual. I made a point of sticking to my routine while handling her transaction. It felt like I was being audited. Feeling oddly tense, I bagged her items and handed them over. She smiled again, expressing her gratitude. Thank you very much. As she was about to leave the register, flipping her lab coat, she stopped and turned back to me. Oh, right. My name is Olivia Smith. Let's have a chat again sometimes." "Sure, I'm John." After exchanging names, she waved contentedly and left the shop. Well, that's an interesting connection. I've already got someone special in my heart. I just hope this interaction with the beautiful doctor doesn't lead to any strange rumors. With that thought, I resumed my work, as if to dismiss such arrogant notions. Since that day, Dr. Smith has made a point of greeting me every time she visits the shop. It's not unwelcome, and having a bit of non-work related chat is a nice break. This had been the case for some time, but she engages with other customers in line, either initiating conversations or responding to them. No dessert today. That's right, it would be too much to have it every day. This was the veteran nurse, who seems to have finally overcome her cravings. Dr. Smith gets along well with her too. Her communication skills are impressively high, making her fit into the workplace so well that it's hard to believe she's a newcomer. Thank you for always keeping it clean. Much appreciated. Not at all, doctor. You too. Hello. No classes at the university today. Hello. I have a late lecture today. She greets everyone with a smile, from the janitors cleaning the hallways to the university students working part-time in the shop. Hey, good on the job. Don't get too carried away. One night, just as it was about to become a new day, I had some errands in the pediatric ward. As I walked down the hallway towards my destination, I noticed an unusual noise for the late hour. What's going on? Prioritizing the commotion over my own errands, I headed towards the source of the voices. Approaching, I realized the noises were coming from a particular room. This situation didn't seem normal. Michael. When I got about 10 meters away from the room where the commotion was happening, I saw a woman sprinting around the corner of the hallway at full speed. Wait, haven't I seen her somewhere? Michael, hang in there. The next thing I heard was Dr. Smith's voice. She was driven by anxiety, a stark contrast to her usual demeanor. Excuse me for a moment. Curious, I peeked into the center of the commotion and saw several doctors and nurses treating a child. A familiar red windmill was decorated at the patient's bedside. I see, the person from earlier, and the name Michael. It must be Michael, who visited the store yesterday. Of course, I'm concerned for anyone in distress, but it's especially worrying when it's a familiar face. Without thinking, I reflexively jumped into the hospital room. Michael. Dr. Smith's frantic shouts caught my attention. Her hands were trembling, and it seemed like she couldn't maintain her usual composure. Oh, Dr. Smith was pale and confused, holding a thin tube in her hands. Excuse me for a moment. I snatched some documents related to Michael from a nurse nearby. Hey, who are you? The surprised nurse's words didn't reach my ears. I skimmed through the file. Michael had asthma and was hospitalized for it. The tube won't fit. Dr. Smith was struggling, and Michael seemed to be in pain. He had a croup-like cough, and epiglottitis was suspected. No wonder she was having trouble with intubation. The swelling narrows the trachea, requiring a certain level of skill. Nurse, please call a pediatrician immediately. Yes. With no time to worry about the sudden outsider, the nurse dashed off, ignoring me. But would help arrive in time. In such a condition, breathing difficulties could arise at any moment. Actually, he might already be experiencing them. Thinking this made me restless, and I impulsively called out to Dr. Smith. Let me try, I can do it. Why are you here? She seemed not to have noticed my entrance, focused as she was on the situation at hand. Let me try, even though you say that, John, you work in the store, right? Quickly, Michael is still suffering. Dr. Smith was even more confused by my words. Indeed, I work at the store. Well, no wonder she's confused. I have a medical license. I almost forcibly took the tube from Dr. Smith, who stood there frozen. Then, I proceeded to insert it into the trachea of Michael, who was in distress. It was significantly swollen, indeed challenging. Without real field experience, it would be tough to manage. Well, John, you don't just stand there admiring. Get the medication and oxygen ready. After completing the intubation, I urgently directed her and the remaining nurses. I could feel their questioning glances, wondering who I was. But time was of the essence. It seemed like everyone there shared a sense of urgency. A little while later, his condition seemed to have improved slightly. The peak of his distress had passed, and his coughing was gradually subsiding. Just then, the nurse who had dashed out earlier burst back in. "Dr. Wilson, over here." Oh. The pediatrician, Dr. Wilson, who entered the room with her, widened his eyes when he saw me. It also seemed like he gave a slight smile at the same time. "I'll take over from here." He stood by Michael's side and quickly assessed the situation. Then he continued speaking to me. "Thank you, John." His treatment continued. As an experienced doctor, his skills were evident. Each action was quick yet precise, and his instructions to the nurses were clear. "Let's leave the rest to him." "Yes." Encouraging his son Dr. Smith, we both left the room. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, waiting for her to calm down. Though I intended to wait, she spoke sooner than I expected. "Really, how pathetic I am." Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled. Intubation in that state is difficult. It's understandable for a novice doctor with little experience not to manage it. It's about gaining experience from situations like this and improving. No matter how much you study and train to become a doctor, the actual field can differ significantly from the ideal. I too have felt this starkly in the past. "John, but I couldn't do anything for him as he suffered. That's what frustrates me." The tears that had been welling up fell. Every doctor has their specialty. Even Dr. Wilson, an expert in pediatrics, would probably find neurosurgery challenging, and I doubt he can perform heart transplants. So don't beat yourself up. It's about finding your strengths going forward. I intended to comfort her with these words, but she was still crying. That might be true, but it's still frustrating. I can't always make children smile, nor can I save the suffering ones. Maybe I really can't do anything after all. I regretted my words a bit. In situations like this, what's needed isn't advice. It's words that affirm the person who is feeling down. "That's not true, Dr. Smith." I deliberately addressed her with the title doctor to protect her dignity as a doctor, because I thought she might otherwise become self-critical. "Your instructions were precise. Sending someone to call Dr. Wilson was the right decision. It's fair to say that your judgment saved Michael." After I spoke those words, she wiped her tears with a handkerchief and whispered a quiet thank you. At the same time, she nodded repeatedly, as if savoring my words. Then she asked me a question. "John, you were actually a doctor, right? A life-saving one at that, to perform such a difficult procedure flawlessly." Having somewhat recovered, she now seemed interested in my story. "With such impressive skills, why do you choose to hide them and work in the store?" As I spoke, her face, without me realizing, had brightened up as usual. If I had to point out anything different, it would be that her eyes were bloodshot. I hesitated about whether to share my circumstances. I hadn't done anything wrong, nor did I have anything to hide. I was just afraid that talking about it might reopen my own wounds. But brooding over it forever wouldn't start anything new. Come with me." Deciding to open up, I asked her to follow me. Turning around, I started walking down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed as she followed behind me. Weaving through the hospital, I led us to a certain room. The room's lights were off as we entered. "This is a private room for a bedridden patient, right?" "Yes." As she said, a single girl slept by the window at the far end of the room. Only the light by the bedside was on, and 2 folding chairs were set up. "You must be tired. This is going to be a long story." After prompting her to sit, she did so with a puzzled look. Then, I turned to the sleeping girl and gently touched her face. Placing my palm on her cheek, I stroked under her eye with my thumb. As expected, she showed no response. "Amelia Taylor." Seeing the name on the wristband, she seemed to grasp what I was about to say. "Could this child be yours, John?" "Yes, Amelia, 3 years old. My daughter. She's been in a coma since birth due to an accident during delivery. She's never opened her eyes. Not even once." As I revealed the truth, she covered her mouth, a look of shock crossing her face. "When Amelia was born, my wife, Emma, lost her life. She had a placental abruption, and an emergency surgery was required. The response was quick, but the uterus didn't contract, and she bled out. Amelia was deprived of oxygen, leaving her brain damaged and in a coma from the moment she was born. While Emma was fighting for her life, I was swamped with an entirely different task. I only learned about the severity of my wife's childbirth after everything had ended. At that time, I was a busy emergency medicine physician. That day, too, I was performing emergency surgery on a patient from a traffic accident. Phew, that was close. Yeah, John, you're as skilled as they say. I'm not really. It's all thanks to the support from my seniors. Relieved after the surgery, I had such conversations with the senior doctors. But the cheerful atmosphere suddenly changed. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and then the door was flung open. A breathless nurse, with tear-filled eyes, looked at me. "Dr. Taylor, please, come quickly." I had been notified about entering the delivery room, so I was planning to head there soon. Thinking casually that my child must have been born, her expression filled me with dread. Her face was far from celebratory. Following the nurse, I found Emma peacefully asleep. Her face was serene, showing no signs of distress. Holding her cold, white hand, I knelt down and wept loudly. A grown man, crying unabashedly, shedding large tears. "Emma, Emma." A large stain formed on the sheets. I shouted until my voice was hoarse, but she never woke up to chide me for being too loud. That day, the patient I was in charge of miraculously pulled through. I was thanked profusely by both the patient and their family, but I couldn't genuinely accept their gratitude. It wasn't that I couldn't accept my wife's passing. I just wished I could have fought alongside her until the end. I wasn't there for her final moments. She never got to see Amelia after she was born. And Amelia has never seen her parents or the world, remaining asleep. Our family was torn apart, suspended in midair. Since then, my spirit was broken. I couldn't work as a doctor anymore. Amelia's primary physician became Dr. Rodriguez, a pediatrician and my mentor. I see. I couldn't bear the thought of our family remaining divided. I decided to stay close to her by working at the hospital store. Thanks to Dr. Wilson's kindness, I'm allowed to stay overnight with her a few times a month. It just so happened that this coincided with the commotion involving Michael. I'm sorry for asking without knowing your situation. Dr. Smith, sitting next to me, fidgeted with an apologetic look. I was about to reassure her that it was okay, but she was the first to speak. But I want you to return to medicine, John. Excuse me. Her unexpected words took me by surprise. She then shared her past with me, looking downcast. "John, I lost my best friend in an accident. They had plans for the next day and even for the upcoming holiday. But those plans never came to fruition. I wanted to reduce the number of people dying from sudden accidents. That's why I chose to become an emergency medicine doctor." Her usually gentle demeanor was filled with determination and strong emotion. But after the incident with Michael, I realized how inexperienced I still am. "That's why, John." What? I was startled by her sudden approach and raised my voice unintentionally. It echoed down the hallway, likely causing a disturbance. "I wish for you to return as a senior in emergency medicine. Please, let me call you my master." Master? Her unexpected words left me astonished. Despite my shock, she continued, "I've always felt a sense of urgency. Despite having lofty goals, my skills didn't match up. I was trying too hard to fit in to cover that up." To me, her behavior had always seemed natural. I thought it was just her being herself, but it seems I was mistaken. "That's why I envy your skill, John, if you're willing to return to medicine." "I'm sorry, Dr. Smith." Her words truly meant a lot to me. But the trauma from that day still held me back. "I can't sort out my feelings yet." "Is that so? But I won't give up. I'll keep asking you until you're sick of it." She declared this emphatically. Weeks passed since that day. I was working as usual at the store, handling the queue of customers at the register. Then it happened. Whoa, what was that? A loud thump sounded. Unable to stop the register, I continued my work, albeit distracted. "Did you hear that noise just now?" "Yes, it was quite the impact. I wonder what happened." "That's the thing, you see." An older lady mentioned that there had been a traffic accident on the main road in front of the hospital. Apparently, a bus and a large truck had a head-on collision. Several compact cars were involved, turning it into a major disaster. Some people saw the victims being brought to this hospital. "John, please, we need your help. We're short-staffed." Dr. Smith arrived at the store, out of breath. Coincidentally, there were orthopedic, neurology, and cardiac surgery conferences today, so there were fewer doctors in the hospital. "Wait, No time, let's go." "Hey, Dr. Smith." Despite my reluctance, she forcibly dragged me to the scene. Just then, a college student working part-time arrived. "Hey, take over the register, please." While instructing him, Dr. Smith led me away without further resistance. People were being brought in one after another, and the hospital was reaching its bed capacity. It felt like a battlefield hospital, and I was genuinely shaken. John, perfect timing. I need you for the next patient." Daniel, a fellow emergency medicine doctor I used to work with. He was surprised to see me for a moment but quickly got back to his duties after relaying what was needed. Instructions were thrown at me before I could even prepare myself. There was no time for second thoughts. My body moved on its own in such circumstances. The patient brought in was a young pregnant woman. Her belly was significantly swollen, and a man was calling her name from a distance. This must be some kind of trial. Needless to say, the patient assigned to me was the pregnant woman. She had a laceration on her right arm from glass shards and seemed to have a fracture. Worst of all, there were signs of a severe blow to her abdomen. Immediate treatment and a C-section were needed to save both the mother and the child. Damn, why am I remembering this now? Emma's face flashed through my mind. Bound by that vision, I involuntarily stopped my emergency treatment. "John." Dr. Smith, who had come to assist, snapped me out of it. Shaking off the distracting thoughts, I focused on treating the patient. I regained my composure and gave instructions to the nurses. We need to treat the arm and perform a C-section simultaneously. Get the obstetrician here. Yes. Cries, groans, and shouts filled the air in the waiting area. Amidst all that, I found myself in an oddly quiet operating room, beginning to suture the pregnant woman's arm wound. It was a surgery where every second counted, a moment of intense urgency. My hands trembled with a familiar kind of anxiety I hadn't felt in a while, but I had no choice but to do what I could. Reassuring myself, I managed to make the final stitch. The bleeding stopped as the wound closed. The fracture seems like it can be fixed with manual reduction. Relieved, I wiped the sweat from my forehead, and almost simultaneously, I heard a baby's first cry nearby. The baby is born safely, the obstetrician announced, and the operating room burst into a collective relief. The patient's vital signs stabilized. Thank goodness, really. Amid the cheers, I quietly shed tears. The accident was caused by the truck driver falling asleep at the wheel. He had a chronic condition and had taken medication with drowsiness as a side effect. He's hospitalized in a local hospital now, receiving treatment. The pregnant woman I operated on is also on her way to recovery. Her baby was in the NICU but was soon moved back to a regular ward. Though her dominant arm is broken, making childcare challenging, her husband seems kind, which is reassuring for now. While walking down the hallway with these thoughts, I happened to run into that family. The husband was holding the baby, with his wife beside him. "Dear Taylor, that's you, isn't it?" "Yes, I'm John Taylor." As I introduced myself, the couple's solemn faces lit up. Their baby was sleeping in the father's arms. "Thank you so much for everything. We'll never forget your kindness." "It's nothing. I was just doing my duty as a doctor." Though I said that, they kept thanking me over and over again. Seeing the lively couple, I felt proud to be a doctor. That night, the hospital had calmed down and returned to normal. In a room, I spoke to my sleeping princess. "That's what happened. Impressive, right? Daddy did well." Of course, there was no response. Suddenly feeling empty, I was reminded of the past. The funeral, dealing with relatives, and above all, the sorrow of loss that prevented me from celebrating Amelia's birth. This guilt was the main factor hindering my return. "Amelia, would you support me if I said I wanted to return to being a doctor?" I looked at my daughter. "Haha, your eyes and mouth are just like Emma's. I'm looking forward to the day you wake up, Amelia." Just as I gently stroked her head, whispering to her, "Amelia," I caught a slight movement of her finger out of the corner of my eye. I grabbed her hand and called out, "Amelia, Amelia." But there was no response. Well, things don't work out that conveniently, do they? I was excited for a moment. But I quickly regained my composure and sat back down in the chair beside the bed. At a glance, her face seemed to be smiling. Eventually, I chose to return to emergency medicine. Dr. Smith, who calls me master despite my protests. Daniel always laughs, saying she's like a shadow following me around. "Daniel, John is not a goldfish, that's right, he's an orca." Despite the collective eye rolls, Dr. Smith doesn't seem to mind. My working hours and shifts are flexible due to Amelia, which I'm grateful for but also feel guilty about. I intend to do my best with what I can. It seems like Amelia's hand movements have been increasing. Perhaps as I take steps forward, she is following suit. She can't walk or talk yet, but I always dream of going home with her someday. Recovery from despair takes time. How long it takes depends on the individual's mental state. Perhaps I've taken quite some time. For about 3 years, I had averted my eyes from my profession as a doctor. But I have recovered now. For Amelia's sake, I can't stay stagnant forever. What's lost won't return, but memories live on in the heart. Cherishing them, I vow to look forward with hope. Remembering my wife's smile, that was my pledge.
Hey, are you okay? I called out to the blonde woman on a mountain trail, about a 20-minute hike from the parking lot halfway up the mountain. When she turned around, I noticed her features were distinctly different from those of an American, so I assumed she was an Asian. Hi. Actually, I've hurt my foot. She explained to me that while climbing the trail, she had twisted her ankle after trampling on a rock. Her destination was the same temple I was heading to, but it would be tough for her to walk with her current condition. When I offered her advice in the Japanese I had learned long ago, she explained why she was so determined to reach the temple. I understand. If that's the case, I'll help you. I extended my hand, and she smiled and thanked me. At that moment, I hadn't realized. I had no clue just how significant her influence on my life would be. My name is John. They say life has several turning points, and for me, it was when my mother passed away 3 years ago. My mother had always been adventurous and wouldn't be satisfied until she experienced things for herself. Before she died of a kidney disease, she said to me with a lonely look on her face, "Oh, I wish I could have visited Antarctica at least once." John, if there's something you want to do, make sure you do it while you're still healthy. Up until then, I had been a person who prioritized stability, avoiding failure and uncertainty. After graduating from college, I chose a government job not out of a noble desire to improve people's lives, but simply because I wanted a stable income. However, my mother's words lingered in my mind, leading me to make a significant decision. I decided to quit my government job and dive into the world of subculture, which I had always loved, including manga, anime, and games. For someone like me who valued stability, entering an industry known for its rapid changes seemed unthinkable. But spurred on by my mother's words, I chose to pursue a path that could inspire many people in the subculture world I had been immersed in since childhood. At the age of 29, I resigned from my government job and joined Autumn Rain Publishing, a mid-sized publishing company. Autumn Rain Publishing publishes a wide range of books, including novels, nonfiction, and academic books, and recently, they've been publishing many manga that serve as the basis for anime. By emphasizing my practical experience as a civil servant and my lifelong passion for the subculture, I managed to join the event planning department at Autumn Rain Publishing. The main tasks of the event planning department include organizing events to promote our company's content and preparing for participation in various events. Naturally, given my geek background, my job was to promote Autumn Rain Publishing's manga at events. After reviewing the data from previous events our company had participated in, I suggested to my boss, Michael, we should participate in this year's Autumn Come Fest. Autumn Come Fest is a large-scale self-published manga convention held every fall. While self-published manga conventions are typically seen as amateur-only events, in recent years, many have included corporate booths, with other publishers, anime studios, and game companies participating in past Autumn Come Fests. Seeing that our company had no record of participating in such conventions, I made a strong recommendation. You're right, gaining experience at such events could be valuable for our future initiatives. Alright, John, put together a proposal. With Michael's approval, I used my experience as a participant to prepare for our booth at Autumn Come Fest. 6 months after the proposal, I found myself at the event venue as an exhibitor. This year's Autumn Come Fest was held in a neighboring state, more than a 5-hour drive from where I lived. Due to the possibility of bad weather on the day of the event, the staff from Autumn Rain Publishing decided to head to the venue the day before to complete the necessary preparations. Since the preparations were finished by the morning, I decided to drive to a place I had wanted to visit for a long time. It's on foot from here. Wow, it's exactly like the anime. Getting out of the car, I was moved by the landscape, identical to the one from an anime I had watched countless times as a child. The parking lot was halfway up the mountain, and an unpaved trail quietly led to the summit. I was visiting the location said to be the model for the anime I was obsessed with as a child, Whirlwind Girl. Whirlwind Girl is a story about a boy who meets a girl from another world on his way to a temple where he always spent time alone. and grows as he protects her from an organization from her world. The scene where the protagonist, a lonely boy named Jake, climbs this mountain trail and meets the girl escaping from another world is etched vividly in my mind. Knowing that the temple was within driving distance from the Autumn Komi Fest venue, I decided to take this pilgrimage to the Whirlwind Girl location. By the way, a pilgrimage involves visiting the actual locations that inspired a work. So, this is where Jake. Entering the trail, I slowly walked, reminiscing about the anime scenes. For popular anime, the model locations often gain fame and attract many fans. However, Whirlwind Girl was created before I was born and wasn't widely known. So the trail and the temple ahead were not famous as anime pilgrimage sites. Because of this, I could take my time exploring without worrying about anyone watching me. As I walked along the mountain path for about 20 minutes, I spotted a blonde woman sitting against a tree. If her condition had worsened, maybe I should call an ambulance. I'm worried about her, so I asked, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me with anxious eyes. Judging by her complexion and distinct features different from an American, she seemed to be a tourist from abroad. She had colored contacts, with her right eye a deep green and the other orange. I had a feeling I had seen her somewhere before recently. Suddenly, a realization struck me as I looked at this strikingly beautiful Asian woman in front of me. "You're Nanae, the cosplayer, aren't you?" I used my Japanese skills acquired from a long time ago to speak to her. Having lived in Japan until I was in the 6th grade and having used Japanese to deal with Japanese visitors during my time as a civil servant, I prided myself on my near-native pronunciation. Her eyes widened as she replied in halting English, "Yes, I am Nanae." Nani is a cosplayer living in Japan who has been active on social media for several years. According to the event's official website, she was scheduled to participate in a photoshoot at this year's Autumn Komi Fest, dressed as an anime character. Relieved that we could communicate, Nanae said in her hesitant English, "You can speak Japanese." "Good. Can you understand my English?" I crouched to meet her eye level and said, "I understand. But since this seems like an emergency, shall we continue in Japanese? Are you feeling unwell?" Nanae explained that she had twisted her right ankle on a rock while heading to the temple further up the trail. Following her gaze, I saw her swollen ankle. "Walking is going to be tough. Let me lend you my shoulder, and let's go back to the parking lot together. We can head to a hospital from there." Thinking it was best to prioritize treatment, I suggested that she turn back. However, she shook her head and said, "I must go to the temple ahead. Visiting the site from Whirlwind Girl is one of my reasons for coming to the US. The Autumn Komi Fest is tomorrow, and I will leave the US the day after. So, I only have today." Most people would probably tell her there was no need to push herself to visit while injured. But when Nani mentioned Whirlwind Girl, I felt a strong desire for her to see the site. I love that series too. I never expected to meet a fellow fan here. I said this excitedly and then turned my back to her. "But I can't let you walk in that condition. However, as a fellow fan of the anime, I want to help you visit the site. So, would you let me carry you?" It was probably an unexpected suggestion for her. Nanae hesitated with a frown but then gave a small nod and a cute smile, saying in English, "Please, I'd appreciate it. I wish I'd gone on a diet." She then leaned her weight onto my back. Though it normally takes about 10 minutes to walk from where Nanae was sitting to the temple, carrying someone slowed me down significantly. With breaks along the way, it took me about 30 minutes to finally reach Ryushin Temple, the temple from Whirlwind Girl. Wow! This is where Jake and Fina fought the organization's monsters, right? Nanae exclaimed with joy from my back as we arrived at Ryushin Temple. During the walk, we had talked extensively about Whirlwind Girl, knowing we were both fans of the anime. "That's right. Look over there. Those are the steps where they ate rice balls in the second episode. Shall we go check it out?" Nanae responded enthusiastically, "Yes, please. Oh, this is what a pilgrimage is like. I can't wait to take pictures," looking around eagerly. In the anime, Ryushin Temple served as a secret base for Jake and the girl from another world, Fina. It was the setting for many of their daily scenes, filled with so many topics to talk about for anime fans. Though I should have been exhausted from the trail, The joy of visiting a favorite anime's pilgrimage site with Nanae on my back made me forget my fatigue. Before I knew it, we had been exploring the temple grounds for over an hour. I'm so sorry. You've been carrying me for so long. Am I not heavy? After finishing our exploration, we decided to take a break on a bench near the temple office. Nanae, who had settled down, expressed her concern for me, making me feel a bit embarrassed. You were not heavy at all. Compared to carrying heavy equipment for Autumn Komi Fest, it was nothing. But how is your ankle? As I said this, I looked at her ankle. While touring the temple, we asked the temple office for something to cool her sprained ankle, and they kindly provided an ice pack. Her ankle was now wrapped with a towel holding the ice pack in place. It feels much better. You know, there's a scene like this in Whirlwind Girl too. Jake carried Fina when she was injured. Her smile, as she spoke about the anime, was as charming as a flower, and I couldn't help but be captivated by it. Though her age wasn't public, she seemed to be around my age or maybe a bit younger. As I was about to be entranced by the charm of such a famous cosplayer, who was invited to events all over Japan, a cold drop hit my cheek. The forecast said the weather would worsen tomorrow morning, but it looks like the rain is coming now. As I muttered this, raindrops started to fall from the cloudy sky. Since we would get drenched sitting on the bench, I carried her again and headed towards the eaves of the main hall for shelter. I thought the rain would stop soon if it was just a passing shower, but I was completely wrong. Within less than 20 minutes, the wind picked up, and the heavy raindrops pounded the ground with a deafening noise. As Nanae and I exchanged worried glances, one of the monks from the temple office approached us with an umbrella. When we thanked him again for lending us the ice pack, he shook his head, saying it was nothing, and told us something shocking. That strong wind earlier caused a tree to fall on the path leading up to the parking lot. I checked with a friend who's a contractor, and they said it's too dangerous to work in this weather, so the road won't be cleared until at least tomorrow morning. When I translated the monk's explanation for Nanae, she covered her mouth and widened her eyes in surprise. The monk, seeing her distressed look, kindly suggested, "We have a guest house here. You can stay overnight free of charge since it's an emergency. And as there are no other guests, we can offer you a private room." Considering the weather and the steepness of the path we had climbed, staying at the temple seemed like the best option. Nanae and I thanked the monk gratefully and followed him to the guest house. The first thing we did upon arriving at the guest house was to inform the necessary parties. We notified the hotel we were supposed to stay at and Michael, who was participating in the Autumn Komi Fest as a staff member. According to the weather forecast, the storm was expected to subside by midnight. The monk's friend, a contractor, promised to remove the fallen tree first thing in the morning. So we should be able to reach the Autumn Komi Fest venue by noon at the latest. When I explained this over the phone, Michael said calmly, "I understand. Let me know your exact arrival time once you have it. You've prepared well today, so don't worry if you're a bit late tomorrow. Everything will be fine." Nanae also struggled to inform her contacts about the possibility of being late for the Autumn Komi Fest tomorrow. For those she absolutely had to call, I helped by translating, and we managed to relay the necessary information. "You've been a great help. I thought I had studied enough English, but it's still tough to communicate about complex issues," she said. Bowing apologetically, I shook my head and replied, "It's no problem. We help each other in times of need. Besides, think of this as a rare experience. It's not every day you get to stay at a temple guest house." When I explained what a guest house was, she seemed intrigued and said, "So monks train here, we are lucky that we get to stay at such a place." Smiling cheerfully. However, the guest house only had minimal lighting, and being in the mountains during a stormy night felt quite unsettling. After finishing our meal of temple cuisine, Nanae and I volunteered to help with the dishes and then took a break in the guest house's entrance hall. "By the way, John, why is your Japanese so good?" As a Japanese, I was surprised at how easy it is to understand you, she asked. Realizing that we had only talked about Whirlwind Girl since meeting, I noticed we hadn't shared much about ourselves. I told her about spending my childhood in Japan until I moved back to America at age 12. When I was little, I only spoke English at home and lessons in school, so Japanese used to be my stronger language. My interest in America actually started with Whirlwind Girl, I explained. Nanae blinked her different colored eyes a few times and whispered, "No way. When I asked what was wrong, she shook her head and said, "It's nothing." Her face turned as red as an apple. I asked as I was getting worried, "Are you feeling unwell?" The monk mentioned they have some over-the-counter medicine. "Should I get some for you?" But she shook her head repeatedly and said, "I'm fine. I just have some things to think about. I'll go rest now." She then went to her room. Feeling a bit puzzled by her behavior but having nothing else to do, I returned to my room and fell asleep to the sound of the storm pounding the guest house. The next day, the storm stopped by midnight as predicted, and the contractor began clearing the fallen tree early in the morning. Fortunately, Nanai and I should be able to reach the Autumn Komi Fest venue, albeit a bit later than planned. Her ankle was almost completely healed, and she could walk on her own. Since Nanai had taken a taxi to the parking lot, I offered, "We're heading to the same place. Would you like to ride with me?" Though I had been worried about her after last night's incident, Nanai's eyes lit up, and she said, "Thank you. I'm sorry about yesterday. I'm fine now," bowing repeatedly to emphasize that I shouldn't worry about it. I was relieved to see her in good spirits and said, "All right then, let's get going," encouraging her to get into the car. Participating in the Autumn Komi Fest as an exhibitor for the first time felt like a department store closing sale with the crowd. The products prepared by Autumn Rain Publishing were character goods from our manga series. Since these were newly created specifically for Autumn Komi Fest, even our backup stock was selling out rapidly. Seeing the unexpected sales, Michael patted my shoulder and said, "We'll need to stock more next year," clearly delighted. During breaks, I visited the photo shoot area where Nanae was participating. Under the gaze of many photographers, she struck poses perfectly embodying an anime character. Responding to pose requests in English, she truly exemplified a professional cosplayer, and I felt a deep sense of respect for her. During a break from the photo shoot, she waved at me from afar. I wanted to talk to her, but knowing she was working, I decided not to interrupt and returned to the booth to continue the hectic sales. To my surprise, Nanae, still in her anime character cosplay, visited our booth. I have a lot of Autumn Rain Publishing's manga. It's great that they're also available in Japanese, so I can recommend them to my friends in Japan. My colleagues were wide-eyed at the sudden appearance of the beautiful Asian woman. Nadae bought a few items from our booth, and as she prepared to leave for her next venue, she expressed her regret at parting. As she was leaving, she gently squeezed my hand and said, "Thank you so much for yesterday. I'll see you later," before departing from the Autumn Rain Publishing booth. Wondering what she meant by "see you later," I noticed a small note she had slipped into my hand. Discreetly checking its contents, I read, "Could you meet me at the station square at 7 p.m? There is something I want to talk to you about." Feeling that it would be a shame to part ways with her like this, I spent the remaining time at Autumn Komi Fest in a state of restless anticipation. After successfully wrapping up the cleanup, I arrived at the designated station square precisely at the appointed time. She's not here yet. Looking around, I couldn't spot Nanae's trademark blonde hair. Just as I felt relieved and took a deep breath, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. I turned around to see an Asian woman with short black hair and hazel eyes standing there. Startled by the unexpected person, I gaped as she said, "Sorry I'm late." "It's me, Nanae. You didn't recognize me in this look, did you?" She stuck her tongue out playfully. "Nanae?" "But," I stammered. She explained that when she was cosplaying as Nanae, she always wore a blonde wig and colored contacts to make her appearance more distinctive. She had even kept the wig and contacts on until just before bed at the guest house. But more importantly, a face from deep in my memory resurfaced and dominated my thoughts. Could it be Irina? When I mentioned the name of the friend I remembered most from my childhood in Japan, Irina gave me the biggest smile yet. "You remembered. It's been 18 years. Let's go somewhere we can talk," she said. My loud exclamation had drawn the attention of those around us. "Yeah. How about that bar over there?" Still shocked by the unexpected reunion, I walked with Irina to a nearby bar. After we each finished our first beer, we started talking non-stop. Her real name was Irina. The name Nanae was a stage name she adopted from her beloved grandmother. She had started cosplaying because of something her grandmother said just before she passed away 2 years ago. "Listen, Irina. You only live once, and there are limited things you can do while you're young, so give challenges while you can. After graduating from college and working for a trading company, Irina had felt that her life was somewhat dull. So, I ventured into the world of cosplay and subculture. You know how much I loved cosplay. As a child, she would modify her clothes to mimic anime characters and often got scolded by her parents. I see. Actually, Hearing about her past, I shared my story about how my late mother had also taught me the importance of giving challenges. After expressing her condolences for my mother, Irina said with teary eyes, "I feel like it's fate. After all, it was Whirlwind Girl that brought us together as friends and allowed us to meet again yesterday. We had become friends as children because I got hooked on Whirlwind Girl, a series Irina had recommended. I'm really grateful to you, Irina. Before that, I never really felt like I belonged in America. But when you said you were envious of me being born in the country that made such cool anime and recommended Whirlwind Girl, I started to see America as my roots. From what I learned yesterday, Irina was leaving for Japan tomorrow. Not wanting our fateful reunion to end here, I decided to share a long-held feeling with her. When we were kids, talking about anime with you made me happier than anything. Whirlwind Girl is undoubtedly a great series. But I kept rewatching it because I wanted a reason to be closer to you." Holding her hand, I looked at her earnestly and confessed my feelings. "I want to be close to you again, like we used to be. Even after you return to Japan, I want to stay friends, or ideally, something more." Hearing my confession, Irina swallowed hard and tears welled up in her eyes. "I've always liked you since we were kids. I was too embarrassed to say it back then." Shortly after I returned to America, Irina's family moved to another prefecture. Amidst the chaos, she lost my contact information, and that's how we ended up losing touch with each other. I always hoped to see you again, so I kept studying English. I want to be more than friends, like Jake and Fina. The last scene in Whirlwind Girl shows the grown-up protagonist and heroine surrounded by their family, seemingly their children, leading a happy life. Knowing her true feelings made my eyes well up with tears, and I said, "Thank you. I'm looking forward to the future with you, Irina." Afterward, I became much more dedicated to my work than I had ever been as a civil servant. Having Irina as my girlfriend supporting me from afar was the biggest reason. Irina also continued to grow, gaining attention as a cosplayer both domestically and internationally. A year after we started dating, Irina appeared as a guest at an event I hosted for Autumn Rain Publishing. I truly love America. I owe who I am today to American anime. Seeing Irina greet the fans at the event in fluent English, thanks to our many conversations, made my heart swell with pride. However, a year after that event, Irina suddenly announced her retirement from cosplay. The reason was that she had accepted my marriage proposal. Fina from Whirlwind Girl also devoted herself to her family after getting married, right? So I want to dedicate myself entirely to you after our marriage. One day during a holiday, Irina explained the reason for her retirement from cosplay while snuggling up to me in the living room. I embraced my beloved wife and said, "I will work hard for our family, just like Jake. We pledged to build a happy home. Just like the anime that brought us together. Shall I pretend to be your girlfriend? Don't worry, I'm great at acting." Ha! I was quite troubled by my parents' persistent matchmaking attempts, and my boss, Emily, offered to pretend to be my girlfriend. She was way too beautiful to be my girlfriend, but it seemed like this would work out for now. However, on the day of the meeting, not only my parents but I too was shocked by an unexpected revelation. "Alex, is this really your girlfriend?" From that day on, my feelings started to change significantly. Meanwhile, Emily continued to pretend to be my girlfriend indefinitely. I'm Alex. 36 years old. I've been single for 36 years. I have few friends and even fewer opportunities to meet new people. My days end with commuting between work and home. My few friends are all married with kids now, so I rarely see them. The only person I know around my age who's single like me is my boss, Emily. People might think I'm either gay or just unable to find love, but she is also quite a mystery. She's stunningly beautiful, highly competent at work, and I've seen guys hit on her more than once. Yet, she boldly declares at office parties, "I'm staying single forever," and doesn't seem to care about being single at all. I admire and envy her resolute attitude. I don't want to be without a girlfriend. I want a wife and kids. I've been introduced to women several times, including during my school days, but even if the first date goes well, it never leads to anything more. No one has ever told me it's because of my looks or personality, so it doesn't seem to be that. What's the problem? Lately, I've been thinking about this all the time. Alex. Hey. Emily's voice snapped me back to reality. I was at work. Hey, you've been spacing out a lot lately. What's up? If something's bothering you, I'm here to help. No, it's nothing. I'll be more careful. Sorry. Even if I could talk to her, she wouldn't understand my worries. After all, she's someone who thinks being single is the best. It's already 4:30, and there's not much time left until the 5 o'clock end of the day. I need to finish these documents quickly. But if it means working overtime, that's fine too. Because my parents nag me if I go home early. I still live with my parents at my age, and lately, they have been pressuring me about marriage and grandchildren. I'm just worried about your future, Alex. Yeah, we won't be around forever. I understand what they're saying, but still. I really want the same thing. I'm just anxious about how to make it happen. Alex, are you staying late? Let's grab a drink tonight. John, who sits next to me, is a colleague from my same year. He has a wife and 2 kids. I don't have deep relationships at work, so even though I'm friendly with John, we've never gone out for drinks personally. John, you should go home. Your wife is taking care of the twins by herself, right? He made a resigned face and said, That's why. When I get home, all I hear until bedtime is how hard her day was. I want to stay out late sometimes too. Unbelievable. If I had a wife and kids, I would definitely want to go home early to see them. But since I don't know what marriage is really like, maybe my thinking is naive. Maybe I should ask him about it over drinks. I decided to focus until the end of the day and then head to the pub near the station with John. His recommended pub is cheap and the food is decent, but we have to get there early to get a seat. Tonight, we hurried from the office and managed to snag a couple of seats at the counter. We toasted with beers and started to unwind from the day. Halfway through my mug, I remembered. I should text my mom that I won't need dinner tonight. John asked, Who are you texting? Mom, I replied, and he chuckled. I know why he's laughing. But I don't want her to go through the trouble of making dinner for me. Her reply said, Enjoy yourself. She probably thinks I'm out with a woman. I rarely stay out late unless it's for farewell parties or year-end parties. Feeling a bit tipsy from the alcohol, I boldly asked John an intrusive question. Hey, how did you meet your wife and start dating? Since I don't usually discuss such things with coworkers, he seemed surprised but answered sincerely. It was at my previous job. I joined this company mid-career, remember? My wife was my junior at my old company. So, how did you start dating? It was pretty normal. We met at a pub one day, said, Hi, and, oh, it's you, hit it off, went to a second round, and within a week. She came to my parents' house. Even if I met a female colleague at a pub, I can't imagine it turning into a romance from just hi, and, oh, it's you. Usually, it's just a drink together and then, see you tomorrow, right? How does it escalate to meeting the parents within a week? As I pondered this, the person next to me left, and someone new sat down. I'll have a large beer, a breaded pork cutlet, grilled mackerel, and some chicken skewers. Despite the woman's voice, her order was quite hearty. Wait, that voice sounds familiar. I looked over, and there was Emily. The only empty seat at the counter was next to me. She comes to pubs alone? How impressive. She noticed me and we made eye contact. Hi. Oh. We ended up drinking together. And that cat was just so cute. I almost took it home, but then I came to my senses. It wouldn't be fair to keep it in my apartment. Emily, already tipsy, was enthusiastically recounting how she almost adopted a cat from a shelter. John, who loves beautiful women like Emily, was fully engaged in the conversation. For some reason, every guy at our company, even the married ones, is infatuated with her. I, on the other hand, was listening half-heartedly since I didn't have any personal interest in her beyond work. Maybe my low energy bothered her because she suddenly turned the conversation towards me. "Alex, why aren't you getting married?" She is always straightforward, even when drinking. Of all questions, why that one? It's not that simple. I don't have anyone willing to be my girlfriend. She summarized my situation bluntly. That's because you're clueless about the world, Alex. Curious about what she meant, I asked her to elaborate. Apparently, I'm out of touch with modern social life, insensitive to women's feelings, and not sophisticated enough. I was genuinely impressed. Emily really pays attention to people. It's true that I'm not interested in what's happening in the world. I don't watch TV or browse the internet. I don't care about trends or places women enjoy. My hobby is reading. Specifically, paper books. I'm an analog. On weekends, I go to bookstores, and cafes are places for reading, not for talking. Why didn't I realize this sooner? I should meet a woman who shares my love for books. When I get home, I'll look for a book club or some social group for adults. I felt a glimmer of hope and downed the rest of my beer. That's exactly the problem, Alex. That's why you're not popular. Emily said, exasperated. Huh? What do you mean? To put it nicely, you're super laid back. To put it bluntly, you're extremely self-contained. I may not be as outgoing as Emily, but how does she understand my thoughts so well? Is she a genius? Just as I started to take an interest in her, she had already moved on to another topic with John. We ended up at karaoke for the second round. Emily was an amazing singer. But I was exhausted from the unfamiliar night out, and my memory became hazy. When I got home past 11, my parents were grinning in the living room. I coldly told them, I just drank with a colleague. Seeing them visibly disappointed filled me with a sense of guilt. My parents are very close. During my teenage years, I found it embarrassing and would separate from them during family trips. As an adult, seeing friends pair up, I understood that love and marriage can be close bonds. But there are also guys like John who occasionally don't want to go home. My dad coming home on time every night and my mom greeting him with cheerful stories are probably more than just normal. I still don't get men and women at all. Anyway, I should take a bath and then read my mystery novel before bed. As I headed towards the bathroom, my mom called out, Alex, come here for a moment. I was seated across from my parents at the living room table. On the table was a thin photo album. Take a look at this. Mom opened the album to reveal a woman in a flashy dress. I had a bad feeling. Isn't this a matchmaking photo? Dad started to explain. Your aunt from California has been suggesting this for a while. I always thought it'd be better for you to marry for love. So I turned down the matchmaking offers. But since you have no one. Dad emphasized the importance of marrying for love because that's how they did it. Having seen their happiness, I can understand that. But this woman. Isn't this Sarah, Auntie's neighbor? Sarah is 5 years older than me and used to bully me when we visited her place during holidays. She was bossy, took my toys, never waited her turn, and flipped the board when she was losing. Even when we met as teenagers, her nasty attitude hadn't changed. You're so gloomy, Alex, always reading. No wonder you can't get a girlfriend. You're so dull, Alex. Not kind, not attentive. She'd constantly point out my flaws and make snide comments. She probably hasn't changed as an adult. I'm not in a position to be picky, but she is a bit too much for me. Sarah has had far fewer opportunities now that she's 41. Alex, you used to play together a lot, didn't you? Since you already know her. You know what kind of person she is. Knowing what kind of person she is exactly why I don't want this, but saying that would embarrass my aunt. Is it her age that bothers you? Nowadays, there are more hospitals that ensure safe deliveries even for older mothers. Times have changed for the better. Wait, are you saying it's because of her age? How dare you? If you criticize a woman's age, it hurts me, too. That's just how women are. I couldn't find a good reason to refuse. It's not about the age, but something else. At 41, Emily is also that age. But she has a great personality. Alex, you're not really rejecting her because of her age, are you? Hey, Alex, you'd better not make Mom mad. Feeling cornered by them, I blurted out. Well, actually, I do have a girlfriend. She's around 40 and works at the same company. Of course, I didn't, but the only woman who came to mind was Emily, who seemed a much better choice than Sarah. They were momentarily stunned and then broke into big smiles. Despite the late hour, they brought out the champagne to celebrate. They kept asking about her, so I said, she's 41, a department manager, thoughtful, and likes to drink. That's all I knew about Emily. Great, bring her over soon. How about the holiday next week? I had no chance to object to Dad's suggestion. My head was spinning with John's words. It's normal. We met at a pub, hit it off, and within a week she was at my parents' house. The next day, I went to work with a heavy heart. I had to convince Emily to help me out or I'd end up with Sarah. If she came over once, I could say we broke up later. Emily, being a good sport, would probably help me out once. But the problem was how to bring it up. I waited patiently for a moment when she was free. However, she was always talking to someone and never seemed to have any time alone. Alex, you're acting weird. You're staring at Emily too much. John's comment made me realize. I had been watching her all day. I didn't want to be disliked as a creepy guy. I decided to consult with John. So, I'm in trouble. Am I weird for asking this? Well, it's pretty bold to ask Emily of all people. We were discussing it secretly through internal email. We could delete the messages later. Just then, a new message popped up that neither John nor I sent. Shall I pretend to be your girlfriend? From Jones. Ha! We looked over at Emily's desk. She was giving us a peace sign. Then another message popped up. Don't use company email for personal stuff. I'll delete everything. Karaoke tonight. We had CC'd Emily on our emails. After work, the three of us went to the same pub as the previous night. With John's help, we arranged for Emily to come over on the holiday. Leave it to me, I'm great at acting. She said confidently, and a drunken John enthusiastically agreed. Absolutely. He seemed to be enjoying this as if it were someone else's problem. The day finally arrived. I left my house, which was in chaos with deliveries from the pizza place, liquor store, and flower shop, to go meet Emily at the station. I arrived a bit early, but she was already there. Emily in her casual clothes looked just like a model. I'd only seen her in a suit before, but she's truly beautiful in both face and figure. On top of that, she's got an amazing personality. I bet my parents will be more shocked than I expected. And indeed, they were. When I introduced her, they were incredibly surprised. I was also speechless when I learned the shocking truth. You're really her, right? The former actress, Emily? Mom kept asking her over and over. Alex, is it true? Is she really your girlfriend? Dad also kept asking me repeatedly. I was too stunned to say anything. According to the internet, Emily was a famous actress and singer over 20 years ago. She retired suddenly when she was young and was rumored to be working a regular job somewhere. I felt depressed about my own ignorance. That's why so many people at work, married or not, treated her specially. Emily enjoyed the food, drinks, and flowers. My family was giddy the whole time. She kept up the role of my girlfriend with a big smile until the end. Her performance was truly perfect. As they were leaving, my parents enthusiastically told her, "Please come again." She responded with a loud, "Sure." Her acting was so amazing that I couldn't help but regret she quit being an actress. Thank you so much for today. I owe you one. At the station on the way back, I sincerely thanked her for everything. Emily had a troubled look on her face. I didn't drink enough, she said, sounding dissatisfied. Oh, maybe I pushed her too hard. She really got into the role. Even though she drank a lot, she was probably just pretending and couldn't actually enjoy it. I'm sorry, they got a bit too excited. I guess it's not great to be reminded of your past like that, right? I said this, thinking if it were me, I wouldn't like it. She looked at me for a few seconds, then smiled and said, You said you owe me one, right? Then let's go to an after party. What? Now. Karaoke? It wasn't good to teach you that after parties are just karaoke. There are all kinds of after parties. Come on, follow me. Emily pulled me along and we got on the train. We arrived in the city. It was the second-hand bookstore district where I often come to look for books. All right, Alex, walk around freely. I'll follow you. You love books, right? I don't know much about them, but I'll tag along. You probably couldn't read much today because of the worries. I hadn't told her I loved books. And would she really enjoy this kind of after party? When I asked her, she said, "Yes, I'm enjoying it." If this were a date, I wouldn't do well. But I thought I could guide her well in a place full of books. I took her to stores with beginner novels and rare books. Emily seemed interested in a historical novel by a famous author, Robert Thompson, so I bought her the best one. We went into a cafe where we could read books quietly. Since we couldn't talk loudly there, we just drank coffee and read our books. Emily was intently reading the historical novel I recommended. Occasionally, we made eye contact and exchanged smiles, which I found very enjoyable. She also seemed satisfied, so I don't think she was bored. We left the cafe, visited more bookstores, and parted ways when it got dark. I felt a pang of loneliness as we said goodbye, but I quickly pushed it away. Emily had just played along with my charade for the day. She even chose a second-hand bookstore for the after-party, showing how considerate she is. And she's my boss. I can't get the wrong idea. We aren't even compatible. After all, she's a former celebrity. The next day at lunch, I was about to go to a diner with John. At that moment, Emily appeared. She was carrying a large bag. I made lunch. Let's eat together, the three of us. John had been excited about having a pork cutlet set meal today, but he immediately changed his tune, eagerly saying, "Absolutely, absolutely," and started acting all smitten. "You're married," I thought irritably. The weather was nice, making the company cafeteria's terrace pleasant. Her lunch was lavish, with many dishes, including pork cutlets, and it was delicious. Once we were full, she showed me the book she bought yesterday. I finished it. Your recommendation. What is the author trying to say? It was 400 pages long, and she had already read it. I actually don't like Robert Thompson. He often appears on TV, making pretentious comments. However, the book I gave her was excellent and was even made into a movie. Not wanting to lie, I admitted my usual dislike for Thompson and explained, "The theme of this work is infidelity. It highlights the good traits of the male side. His point is probably the manly spirit. But the portrayal of the wife being cheated on is superb." "I see," Emily said, deep in thought. The rest of the lunch break ended with John reacting strongly to the word infidelity and me trying to calm him down. At the end of the workday, John, feeling too bold, invited her for drinks, but she declined and left. I felt a twinge of expectation myself and chastised myself for it. Not wanting to go straight home, I went out to the city. I found myself drawn to the same stores we visited, finally admitting to myself, I think I like Emily. This was a new feeling for me. The following week, an article about Robert Thompson's infidelity appeared in a magazine. At work, women from other departments came to see Emily, and men hesitated to talk to her. The magazine clearly showed Emily walking alongside Thompson. I spent more time than ever checking online news. The internet had already revealed Emily as the former actress. Though she acted normal, the staff were full of jealousy and curiosity, saying all sorts of things. She said she'd stay single forever, or, with those connections, it's no wonder she got a position. Many were quick to change their tune. Even John said, "I'm disappointed." I chose to ignore them. I also treated Emily normally, not mentioning the gossip. She quietly told me, "I'm used to it," but she looked sad. When I got home, my parents were acting strangely. "Alex, I made your favorite hamburger steak with just beef today. How about we watch a movie instead of TV tonight, Alex?" To my parents, I was a poor son being toyed with by a former actress. Their concerned behavior was so painful to see that I decided to tell them the truth. As dinner was prepared and Dad was browsing movie channels, a movie adaptation of Thompson's novel appeared on the screen. It was clearly a promotional stunt taking advantage of the scandal. Seeing him hastily turn off the TV made me feel even worse, so I decided to tell the truth right away. "Hey, about Emily." Just then, the doorbell rang. Mom went to answer it and brought Emily into the living room. "Excuse me for intruding. I'm sorry for coming so suddenly. There was a bit of trouble when I got off at the nearest station." She explained that she came to apologize but hesitated, thinking it might be inappropriate. Then, people around her started to notice her. Someone even yelled, "Cheater," at her. That led to a crowd gathering, as people noticed her and joined in, some for amusement. She ran away from the station, circling around until she finally arrived at our house. I wandered around for about an hour, so no one followed me. My parents had uneasy expressions. No one said a word. As I was about to muster up the courage to speak in the awkward silence, "I'm sorry for causing a scene. But it's true that I'm dating Alex. I'm only seeing Alex. Can you believe that?" Emily said something unbelievable. My parents turned to look at me. I naturally turned to look at Emily. She was staring at my parents. The next person to break the strange silence was my dad. "Ha ha. We don't doubt you at all. Our son would never lie to us." Then Mom followed suit. "Oh, of course. We raised him better than that. Right, Alex? We trust whoever he chooses." Their unusual tone was somewhat amusing, despite the situation. Feeling relieved by the slightly relaxed atmosphere, I was finally ready to tell the truth. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. Actually." But they weren't listening to me at all. Emily had started to cry. We waited quietly until she stopped crying. After she calmed down, she shared her truth. 21 years ago, Emily was offered the lead role in a film based on a novel by Robert Thompson. She was thrilled, but Thompson's side imposed a condition. The condition was that she would be an exclusive actress for all of his works for the next 20 years. Her agency was concerned that this would limit her opportunities, especially overseas, and tarnish her pure image due to Thompson's notorious reputation with women. After many negotiations, the film offer was withdrawn. The office was talking about continuing to work hard while waiting for a big opportunity, but a few months later, an unexpected notification arrived. It was a copy of a contract agreeing to Thompson's terms. Both Emily and the office had been deceived. But the contract that had been signed couldn't be undone. The contract stipulated that an unfair portion of Emily's earnings would go to Thompson, meaning the more she worked, the more the office would end up in the red. It felt like something the mob would do, but there was nothing they could do about it. Emily couldn't star in the film, continue her career, and had a regular obligation to accompany Thompson until her 42nd birthday. Believing she couldn't have a normal marriage with such a burden, she gave up and often declared her commitment to staying single. Soon, that obligation would end, but their last meal together was caught by a tabloid. It was likely a deliberate setup by Thompson's side, either as harassment or blackmail. She regretted not considering this possibility. From the way she occasionally stumbled over her words, I realized the story was true. But from this point on, I wasn't sure how to take it, and I was at a loss. I was considering a normal, happy marriage with Alex, but with all this trouble, I don't think it's possible. But I was serious about it. Please believe me. She said it all so smoothly that I couldn't tell if she was acting or being sincere. I had no clue. After all, I hadn't even told her my own feelings yet. My parents, who had been listening to her story intently, looked at each other and then said in unison, "It's no trouble at all. Please marry our son." Their perfect synchronization showed how close they were. I was the only one who was flustered. Emily's eyes sparkled. "Really? Are you sure someone like me is okay?" They nodded enthusiastically. I couldn't grasp the situation and tried to interject. But every time I tried, Emily would speak over me. Without being able to say anything, Emily and my parents were getting along splendidly. "So, Emily, what do you like about Alex? When did you first think that?" "It was around last year when he became my direct subordinate. Unlike other employees, he treated me normally. He would point out my mistakes calmly and matter-of-factly. "I see, and when did you two become mutually affectionate?" my dad asked. She answered without hesitation. "Embarrassingly, it was only recently. Alex is a bit shy." Wait, did she realize my feelings? Even so, I still hadn't confessed. She continued to chat animatedly with my parents, who loved talking about relationships. Only my dog, who sensed my true feelings, looked at me and whimpered softly. "I've stayed too long," Emily said. "That's all right. Come by anytime. I'll have the bed ready for you. Alex, it's dark. Make sure you escort her home and scare off any weird fans." Without a single word from me, Emily had become my parents' approved fiancée. On the way to the station, still not fully believing it, I asked her, "The part after you retired from the entertainment industry was an act, wasn't it?" "Oh, you noticed?" "Impressive," she said nonchalantly. My heart sank, as dark as the night. Why would she lie like that? Deceiving my parents, what was she thinking? My sadness quickly turned to anger. Enough of this. It's one thing to lie to me, but deceiving my parents is too much. Even if lying is common in showbiz, this is the real world. I shouted in anger. Feeling awkward, I quickened my pace. When I turned back, Emily had stopped far behind, looking down. I rushed back to her and found her sobbing like a child. "It's not a lie. I really do love you. But you never noticed my feelings. Playing the girlfriend role made me happy. And your parents' warmth touched me so much. But you never understood, Alex. This was the only way I could think of. I knew you always read books. But you never noticed me." What is she saying? So straightforward and vulnerable. Emily, always sociable, meticulous, and reliable, must have been acting all along. That must have been so hard. That night, I gathered the courage to express my feelings, and we officially started dating with marriage in mind. It was also a battle against the tabloids and Thompson's side, but since I was not well versed in entertainment gossip, I ignored the frenzy and stayed calm. The noise eventually died down. My parents even eagerly answered interviews, turning public opinion in our favor. The media and Thompson's side's attempt at manipulating information failed spectacularly. Now, a few months later, Emily was being sympathized with as a victim of the dark side of the entertainment industry. And Thompson's reputation had plummeted. We quietly and discreetly submitted our marriage license application. I informed my department, and they threw us a celebratory party. John, drunk, kept saying, "I'm the Cupid here, you gotta thank me too, damn it." I hadn't forgotten that. I had pretty much followed the same path that led John and his wife to get together. It was simple. We met at a bar one day, said hi, and, "Oh, hello," hit it off, went to an after party, and a week later, she was visiting my family. Thinking back, it was so similar that it made me laugh. These things do happen like that. The celebration seemed likely to go beyond a second party into a third. "Alex, you should call your mom and let her know you won't need dinner," Emily suggested. Emily never laughed at me for checking in with my mom about dinner plans. It wasn't just that Emily and my mom got along well, but Emily had grown up without knowing her own parents. She believed that if you have parents, it's only natural to thank them and keep them informed about your life. She admired that I maintained such a close relationship with my parents even as an adult. I also felt a renewed sense of gratitude toward my parents. The happiness of falling in love, getting married, and becoming a family is wonderful. The bond I thought didn't exist was right in front of me. I was wrong for not seeing it. While my indifference worked to our advantage with the media, I wanted to be more sensitive and caring towards the people close to me, like family, friends, and colleagues. I aim to grow more as a person. I hope Emily and I can become a couple who stay as close as my parents are.